Salute to Skipuli. So just a couple of things to go over in this quick video. First, make sure you are going back to review your older assignments because I'm leaving you comments and trying to help you as you translate these sentences. So make sure you do go back and look at those. Second, we're going to go over a sentence that we did yesterday in our lesson that a lot of people had trouble with. So he always denied that the women were braver than the men. Okay, so let's get down to it. First, we should look for our verbs in our sentence. We should recognize, hopefully, that denied is a verb. We also have a verb here with were. So we have two verbs. We're going to see how those are going together in just a second. Next, we want to look for the subject of those verbs. So the subject of denied is he, so that's our first one. And the subject of were is the women, so that's the second one. So two subjects and two verbs so far. Next, we would look for a direct object, but we do not have a direct object in this sentence. So we'll move on to everything else. So let's do the easy one first. We have than the men. We should recognize that as I have a prepositional phrase all to itself down there. Remember, there are two ways to translate than in Latin. We could either use quam, and we'll talk about what case would go with quam in just a minute, or you can use the ablative of comparison. Those are the two ways that we could translate than the men. So we'll discuss those more in just a minute. Next, we deal with everything else. So we have always. Always is just an adverb, so I'm not going to put anything there. We have that. I'm just going to kind of put that in parentheses because we don't actually translate that into English or into Latin in this case. And then we have braver. Braver is our adjective. So I'm going to mark that as our adjective. We need to determine what noun braver is describing. In other words, who is braver in the sentence? The women are braver in this sentence. So braver is going to agree case number and gender with the women. Okay, we are set up. So far, so good. Let's start translating up here with he, our first subject. Oh, but first we have to decide how we're going to handle all of this when we have two subjects, two verbs. We should note there's no and in the sentence. There's no or, so we're going to have a different way. If we look at this that, we have a head verb, that, and then the rest of our statement. That's going to be an indirect statement. Head verb plus an infinitive. So that's how we know we're going to translate that second subject and verb. So let's start with our first subject. We have he. Now he could be translated with ille, or you could just leave it to be part of the verb. That's fine. Third person singular. Next we have always. That one's going to be semper. Of course, I don't want you just writing words above the English as you translate, but I'm trying to help you out here so you can visualize it. Next, we're going to denied. So denied comes from nego, negari, negawi, negatum. That's perfect tense. So we should use our third principal part, and we get negawit. That's the end of our main sentence. Now we'll move into our indirect statement, which I've bracketed here from the women through than the men. So we're not going to translate this that because that just tells us in English that we're going into an indirect statement, but there's no equivalent in Latin. So instead we move on to our subject of the indirect statement, which is the women. And this needs to be accusative. The subject of the indirect statement is in the accusative. Accusative plural here. So feminas. We know that our adjective is going to agree with that, so let's do that one now. It's comparative. So we start with our basic comparative, fortior, and then we add on our ending, es, so fortiores. Were our verb, that one's going to be an infinitive. So esse, just our basic infinitive, our present active infinitive for soon. Finally, we can deal with than the men. So quam always takes the case that is the same case as the adjective. So here, accusative. So quam viros. Or no quam viris. Thus you have your complete sentence.